if there's one theme that I've definitely absorbed in the last 20 or 30 years of my career, it's the more you can find specialists, communicate with them, empower them, and then put it all back together to make something, the better that thing's going to be. If you're highly challenged but not skilled enough, you feel anxious, you feel stressed. If you feel highly skilled but not challenged enough, you feel bored, relaxed, or in control. Now what do I do if I'm not worried about that? If I don't have to be up at 9, what do I do? Do I sleep till 10? Do I go for a run? Do I scroll social media? All these are options, but I want to make an intentional choice about it and make that reality as close to my dream day as I can. And if I can, that's when I start to feel successful.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Paranbi, aka IncrediPaul, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. First off, if you're only listening to this episode, you can also watch it on YouTube. Regardless if you're listening or watching the show, really appreciate your support. Today, I have the honor of having Bobby Dutton on the show. He's an entrepreneur, a performer, and philanthropist. He's also a licensed commercial pilot and flight instructor for fun. So I'm sure we're going to get into that. But how about you introduce yourself the way you would do it?
Well, now I want to be called IncrediBobby, so can we go with that from here on out?
IncrediBobby. Yeah, we could talk about that. We could make an app, or we could come up with one for you.
Sure. Well, to introduce myself, I've always been a curious mind. As soon as I went to college, it was for computer engineering, for hardware and software. So I've written the code and played with the wires. But before that, I was pressing every button I could find and taking things apart and occasionally trying to put them back together, like a lot of people and like you, I suspect. But my journey's been an interesting one. I think the places where I feel the most in my wheelhouse is when I'm doing something technical, understanding all of it at a really deep level, and then deploying that tech or information to do something emotional, to do something that makes me happy or makes other people happy or creates magic. And that's where I love to be. The first place I did that is in my business GBM6, where we produce concerts for colleges. So tons of electronics and light and sound and bass and effects and lasers and all that stuff for huge crowds of people, hopefully having the best night of their life. That's what we do. And it's been 20 years and it's been an incredible journey. For fun, like you mentioned, I love to fly airplanes. That's been my passion. And it's interesting to see how both of those are all about understanding stuff, doing my homework, using it, and then achieving some really cool, really magical result. And that's kind of been my common thread throughout.
No, I love that. Just how all those things come together. Even for when you started, like on the technical side, computer engineer, doing stuff on the hardware side and the software side. I feel like I don't see that a lot. I feel like people are more geared to one or the other. So and you even, I was laughing a little bit when you said that occasionally putting things back together after you take them apart. So yeah, talk to me more about growing up. Like, I'm sure you have some stories of maybe some things that needed to go back together and didn't.
Well, I mean, it's interesting the way I was created. My parents, my dad went to MIT. My dad is the smartest person I've ever seen. My mom was a flight attendant, and she was always been in hospitality, the warm, loving mom. And it's fascinating that now I have a lot of both. I mean, it makes total sense in hindsight, but just the way my father was around the house, he did everything himself. He was the epitome of the handyman. And even to this day, I live in my own place now. My dad does not live here. He's visited. But I'll call him up stressed out and say, Dad, my sink's not working or something. And he'll be like, all right, well, look under the cabinet and turn right towards the oven and you'll see a reed valve that's probably, those things seize up all the time. So if you take out the core, you'll need an extractor and I can lend you that. And I'm like, why do you understand my problem so deeply? when you're just on the phone in a house that isn't even yours. And he's always been like that. And I think it's driven me to just need to understand everything as much as I possibly can. So I've got this thirst for knowledge. I refuse to accept things at face value. Even before you and I just started talking, the microphone wasn't perfect. And we're going to figure this out, not because we need it, but because I simply won't tolerate having something that I don't understand why it's working or not. And that's been my path since day one.
So that's really cool. Even like what you mentioned with your dad, and this whole podcast is all about becoming the most incredible versions of ourselves. So I think this is perfect for you. And like you could share all the what you've learned and what all the steps you've taken along the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a cool journey. And the code writing and the school stuff. I mean, when I graduated from college, I had my shiny new degree. I had some interest in the DJ world and the concert world. I'd done some freelancing with that sort of thing. And I was fascinated by it, but it was by no means a career at first. And so when I graduated, I moved back in with my parents because that's what I could afford. And I started looking for work to use my degree. And for the first 5 years of my adult life, I was working 30 hours a week, writing code for a defense contractor, and getting benefits and a nice stable income. And it was great. I liked the tech. I liked the knowledge. I liked the projects. Like you, I'm a relentless optimist, and I can see that in your smile.
Yeah.
And whether I'm writing boring code or on a roller coaster, I'll find a way to make it an adventure. And that's great. But after a while, I felt like I was spending a lot of time on stuff that wasn't really my passion. And I said, man, if I could afford it, because while money's not the goal, it sure can stress you out when you don't have enough of it to get by.
Yeah,
said,
for sure.
If I could push this side hustle and make it my main thing, that'd be really cool. And so I was building this DJ business because DJing was what drew me to events in the first place.
Sure.
And what got me there was I always wanted to be the entrepreneur. I wanted to be the tech guy. I wanted to be the performer. I wanted to be the artist. I wanted to be the business owner. And it's too much to be great at all those things. There's this risk of, do you want to be a specialist or do you want to be a jack of all trades? And if there's one theme that I've definitely absorbed in the last 20 or 30 years of my career, it's the more you can find specialists, communicate with them, empower them, and then put it all back together to make something, the better that thing's going to be. And so I was torn at first because do I audition for the play or do I learn how to run a lighting console? And DJing was such an amazing way to stack those things. So I could do a fewer amount of tasks, do them really well, but still scratch the itch for the tech and the art and the performance. And that was something lit up in me when I found that. I said, this is the path. This is something I need to be spending more time on. And so at first, most small DJ businesses, you do the gigs you can get. There's block parties, there's middle school dances. I DJ'd my own junior prom and wasn't sorry about that at all. I loved it.
You DJ'd your own prom?
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
It was great.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I was way too shy to thrive with the dating scene at that point. So to have my buttons in my comfort zone, that was a much better way for me to engage with my people and my community. And I adored that. And that was just so much fun. And an interesting fork in the road happens there, where if you're running a DJ company and it's, getting better, you're learning who your clients are, you're getting good at things. There's always one type of event that every DJ is drawn to or tempted to go to. It's weddings. Every young DJ says, man, you're doing these $50 block parties. You get like a couple $100 if you go and do that wedding. And it's like, whoa, big money. And it's tempting. And I was asked to do a couple of weddings. I wasn't thrilled about it because, I don't know, there's something about the wedding. The same thing with the specialists. If you're trying to entertain 20 different demographics, you're kind of trying to be a jack of all trades. If you need grandma to not be offended, the bride and groom to be happy, the parents to be having a good time, the kids to be on board, you can make everyone kind of happy, but you can't make it incredible because there's two varied tastes. And so the thing that was intriguing to me about DJing was, what if I could get a bigger crowd of people that were demographically similar so that I could take them emotionally farther, make it way, 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 way better. Like just this idealistic sense of how can we make this the craziest event ever? And so for that reason, I stopped doing the wedding thing because I said, you know what, there's people that are great at DJing weddings. It's not me. I'm not going to try to get better at it because I don't think that's my calling, but I'm going to be intentional about that. I'm not going to chase the money, even though the wedding money at the time was tempting. I'm going to do something better and see what happens if I do. And so getting into college, I was DJing frat parties, and those were pretty cool musically. Still not great money, still kind of a disaster in a way, but it was fun. And you could experiment musically. If you messed up, people would forgive you. If you got it right, you were a god. You could create some really powerful emotional moments. And that was really cool. And at the same time I was doing this DJ experiment, I was also freelancing for real concerts, the world of real event production. So for minimum wage or less than minimum wage, I would go to these concerts, coil cables in the mud at 4 a.m. after some festival. Man. And I loved it. These days, I don't want to stay up till 4 a.m. anymore. It's too hard.
Yeah, it's tough.
But man, at the time, I was like, what is this cable? It has 19 pins. What do these pins do? Oh, it's a Sockapex. It can carry 6 circuits in one cable, so they can use it for touring really efficiently. Interesting. I was just absorbing all of this tech because it was such a cool example of how to deploy big technology in a powerful and emotional way. It was perfect, except for the $9 an hour problem and trying to pay rent and get my own place. But so I noticed a really interesting opportunity at that point, which was, why can't I make this amazing frat party DJ show bigger than this concert? Why is there such a gap in the middle? Because the biggest DJ, you could go to Guitar Center and you can get 2 more subwoofers and your show gets a tiny bit bigger. But those aren't the same subwoofers that they're using here. It's not like they're using more of the same gear. It's totally different technology and brands and cables and protocols. And I was starting to learn that language. And I was like, how can I hypercharge my DJ business to make it something bigger? And the answer was nobody had done that before, but there was no reason not to. And another interesting thing happened as we started to make this a real company, which was looking at that big concert. It's all about the artists, right? The people on the stage performing. When it's amazing, it's great. It's magic. And if you get this vocalist and it sounds incredible and the lights are just right and it gives you chills, like that's a powerful moment. But these artists are very expensive to get the best ones. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more. And their needs are extreme. They send this technical rider when there's a concert. They need expensive microphones and guitars and keyboards, and hospitality to take care of accommodating an artist is a huge cost. And so I was saying, these artists are talented, at least some of them are, but I think my DJ set from the basement in that frat is more musically varied than what those artists can do. Because if you're selecting the best artist you can afford, you spent all your money and you're now committed to that music. And I was seeing this direction of, what if I want to play a little bit of Spice Girls and then a little Beyonce and then a little Taylor Swift? That's cost prohibitive for almost any concert in the world. But in a frat party, that's just a Thursday night.
Yeah.
So I was saying, what if I could do this? What if I could understand the tech at the big concert well enough, deploy it for a DJ that is musically free and not expensive, and then we could make shows better. And that was the market we created. And that's when I decided this was not just a casual DJ side hustle. This was going to be my professional life. And so the company at the time was called Groove Boston. And we went to colleges, starting with my own, and said, what if we spent all of your money on lasers and none of it on artists? Let me show you what a $50,000 laser show looks like. And they were like, who's going to be the performer. I was like, this guy. I'm going to smash the buttons and I'm going to DJ like it's a frat, but there's going to be 10,000 people there and it's going to be the best night of somebody's life. And it was. And for 10 years, we produced tours that
10
had
years.
10
Wow.
years. We would go to schools and we would just say, this familiar problem where you ask your students who they want to bring to perform at their big concert, and then they give you answers, but you can't afford any of them. So you do the best you can. And then students are mad that you didn't get the huge billion-dollar artists and they don't understand that it's cost prohibitive. What if I could play every remix of the best artists in the world and include all the music from every other best artist in the world? Imagine the night we could have and how we could include people who like every genre and every artist and just have so much fun and really flip it. Design events about the people experiencing the music, not the expensive artist that needs to be taken care of on stage. And that was a totally backwards approach to concerts, but it worked. And so to this day, we work almost exclusively with colleges because we can build concerts for them and they're so much fun. The reason it's called GBM6 now instead of just Groove Boston was 5 years into this 10-year plan, some bigger schools started to hear about us. Schools that were spending huge money on major artists. They were getting the right artists, but they saw how we were being so intentional about these student-oriented, interesting designs and really overthinking the tech. And they said, we want you to build a show for us and work with our students because we see that you're the best at this, but we also want to pay this expensive artist. Can you do that? And I was like, that wasn't really why we got into this, but it would actually be easier. Heck, I'll take a break. We'll get set up, hand whoever it is a microphone, say, have a great show, and we'll be back in 2 hours to help break it all down. And so, sure. So we called that Mission 6. And now it's consolidated as a single entity called GB for Groove Boston, M6 for Mission 6. And that's what we spend a lot of the days on. I would say 9 to 5, but it's much longer hours than that.
I was going to say, sounds a little bit longer than a 9 to 5, but also sounds a lot more fun than the typical 9 to 5.
Yeah. And compared to sitting in my cube writing code, which again, I made the best of, I'd rather work 50 hours on something that matters to me emotionally than 40 hours a week over and over again in a cube. And that gets into, what's my purpose, what's worth my energy, what's worth my time. And that's something that I think people need to focus on and challenge themselves to answer.
Yeah, no, that's an incredible story of how you started doing that for even while you were in high school through college, and just seeing something that needed to be done and just going for it. And I think that's a key thing, because it's IncrediPaul leadership. So I'll tie it back to leadership and you mentioned it with the purpose, is that good leaders have a purpose and they have a vision, and they are not afraid to go after it. And that's exactly what you're doing. And I think the beauty behind what you're doing is that you're having fun with it. I can tell that you're having fun with it, just the way you're telling the story and all the stuff that you've been able to do over the last 10 years with it has been really incredible.
I wish I could tell you it was a smooth sailing adventure the whole time and it was profitable since day one. But, as everybody knows, the entrepreneurial journey is much more volatile than that. And, I can remember when I had to hire my first person. I said, okay, there's enough profit coming in here that one person could get paid. Is it me? Do I get paid? Do I start looking at apartments? And it was tempting because I was ready for that, but I knew I would keep doing the work for free. And I still had a computer job that I could, do that for a while and pay the rent or whatever. So I hired somebody else. My first hire was a general manager that was not myself. So now we had 2 people for the cost of one instead of cashing out early. And that's kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, to kind of just self-invest and keep going. And I can remember the high highs and the low lows of that. I can remember within 1 week, I deposited over $100,000 in an ATM, which was just more money than I had ever known existed in the whole world. And within that same week, I had to borrow money to pay payroll. because I had at least one or two people working for me, and they're not investors. They get paid. It's not their risk. And so the only way I could get money fast was using a credit card, which is like a 30% loan. It's like the
my
worst financial
goodness.
decision you could make. But I was like, I got to pay these people. I said I would. Yes, I'm horribly stressed out. And man, the memory of that giant deposit sure has faded because I spent that money fast on stuff to make the shows happen. But that's the thrill and the journey, for better or for worse. And it does make it feel really fulfilling now when I'm able to look at this business and say, I've got lots of people that this is their career. They've got retirement plans that I'm helping them fund. I have people that are married that met as interns working for me. Just to see that longevity and momentum makes it so substantial and so satisfying.
That is so cool, that just be able to see where you started to where you are now, the growth, and the fact that you're able to invest in your first employee early. I feel like, yeah, I think that's part of the entrepreneurial journey, but I feel like most entrepreneurs pay themselves first before they go ahead and start trying to get other people. But the fact that you had such a vision and so much joy in it, it's like, I can do this for free. I already have a means to pay rent and keep living. I want to keep making sure I can grow this. And I'm sure that is why you're able to get to where you are today.
Absolutely. It's amazing what you can do if the motivation is intrinsic to the act you're doing. And that gets into a really fascinating thing. I'd love to know if you've heard of this. It's flow state.
Yes, I've heard of flow state.
So flow state is where I am when I'm DJing, or when I'm running this team, or when I'm flying an airplane, for that matter, which we should definitely get into later.
Yes, we need to.
But just spending time doing this thing that I'm really, really good at, because I've spent the time learning and watching and asking the right questions and thinking the right brainstorms. And it's very, very challenging. So high skill, high challenge equals flow state. And that's what makes it worth staying in this cycle, regardless of what's going on with money or anything else, to get buried in the activity and just want to sustain it at all costs is a cool thing, and worth pursuing, whatever your flow state is.
Yeah, because everyone's flow state's a little bit different, but I like how you described it, because it really is that high challenge, but also something that you're getting enjoyment from. Because if you over index on it, if it's too challenging, or you're not getting enjoyment from it, then it can either be frustrating or boring.
Right. And I think too many people spend their life in too narrow of an emotional spectrum. You're like, all right, I ate something tasty and then I'm stressed out and angry, and then I watched something on TV, and then, I had this bill that was due. I'd rather just be like, this is the greatest moment of my life. I forgot about everything else. I'm so focused. I'm so invested. And oh my God, this is a disaster. I need to gather the right people and fix this. I don't know. It's kind of exhausting in a way, but it's living, they say the whole people that everybody dies, but not everyone really lives. So it's a matter of how much life are you going to squeeze into the time we've got.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's great. I jokingly say the great philosopher Nick Minaj says that to live does not mean you're alive.
Ooh, she's very wise.
Yeah. she's something for sure. That was definitely, that's the first time I've quoted Nick Minaj on this podcast.
I love it.
But I think it definitely embodies what you're saying about really enjoying life and living it, being in that flow state. So I guess with that, was that something you knew early on about flow state, or you kind of learned as you were doing this?
I saw a TED Talk called Flow, The Secret to Happiness by a deep thinker called Mikhail, very long last name that I can't pronounce, but he's brilliant. And that talk changed my life.
I think.
Yeah. And I think learning exactly what it was I was trying to engineer with this company and with these events helped set a target and helped identify when there's a problem. And that's what I love about flow state as data, because we're engineers, right? So if you're highly challenged but not skilled enough, you feel anxious, you feel stressed. If you feel highly skilled but not challenged enough, you feel bored, relaxed, or in control. Those aren't bad, but they're not that living we're talking about. And that's a fascinating thing too. And even transitioning to some of my pilot thinking is cool to look at, because we look at pilots and you picture that announcement on the PA when you're boarding to take off, and they say, ladies and gentlemen, this is your pilot speaking. We're going to be flying at 38,000 feet, going 650 miles an hour. Sunny skies in Miami. We'll be descending into there in about 4 hours, 27 minutes. But like, we make fun of this voice because this character is like, ooh, you're so calm, like, right? We're so impressed. But what's really going on with that pilot? Why is he so calm? It's certainly not because he's bored, because flying a plane is a complicated, high stakes thing. But he flew that route yesterday. He's flown this plane 10,000 hours in the last year. He is in control. He is relaxed. This is his comfort zone. So that's why he sounds relaxed and bored. This is high skill, low challenge. But when that engine fails and he has to do something quickly, instead of going to stress and anxiety, which is high challenge, low skill, he goes to flow state, which is high challenge, high skill. Because now it's time to prioritize. It's time to do the stuff he trained for. He's practiced having engines out. Now things are getting crazy. And that's actually not exactly the pilot's happy place, but it's where the pilot is firing on all cylinders. So that's where they get out of that control space that we make fun of into this magical flow state. And that's such a cool thing. And I've translated that to leadership and speaking engagements and running a team, and being able to apply pilot thinking as a way to pursue that flow state intentionally and learn how to prioritize and address stress as a toxic behavior, again, has just really helped me hyper focus on an intentional path.
Yeah, I think really being focused and being intentional, that I feel like that's been the word for me the last 5+ years, because I realized that a lot of people do not approach life with intention. They just allow life to happen to you. And then when you allow life to happen to you, a lot of times it's not going to be what you want. And then there's a tendency to think that, oh, all the things are happening, maybe it's not meant for me. Like, why is this happening? And yes, there's an essence of luck in things, but the luckiest people, quote, luckiest people, are also the people who are very intentional about what they're doing, and they can see those opportunities as opportunities that other people might see as setbacks or reasons why they shouldn't be doing it.
Totally. And I think thinking about my experiences as a pilot, there's this feeling that you learn called being behind the airplane, which is you're scrambling to react. Information's coming in. What did the tower just say? Shoot, I got to answer them. Oh, I'm not on the center line on this taxiway, or oh, am I entering Boston's airspace? You're behind. Things are happening and you are not ahead of them, right? And I think that's how a lot of us feel, buried in our inbox and not clear on what's important when, and we're overwhelmed. Feeling stressed and overwhelmed is a very common and relatable feeling for all of us, myself included. But as a pilot, you learn that when you're feeling like that, okay, like somebody could get hurt soon. So like, organize, take a deep breath, fly the airplane, figure out what you need to do next, and shut the rest down. Like, you have to flip that switch, or the consequences are serious. And so that's refreshing to me, because when I get 1,000 emails on a Monday morning and I'm like, oh my God, so many people want so much information from me. Guess what? I can only give one piece of information to one of them right now. Who's it going to be? Everybody else is going to wait. How am I going to determine who that is? I need to be proactive and pragmatic so that I can be in control of the airplane, which in that case is just writing the right email to the right person at the right time without feeling buried by all the other tasks. And so pilot thinking tells you aviate, navigate, communicate. So the first one is just fly the airplane. Literally everything else can wait, because if you're so distracted that you're not sure what direction you're going or whether you're upright, that's a problem. Once you've organized that priority, flying the airplane. Okay, now I do need to figure out a little bit of navigation. Where am I heading next? What direction is that? Okay, we're going that way. We're holding this altitude. This is the path we're on. I like it. This makes sense. I've chosen this intentionally. Now there's some communicating that needs to happen. Does my passenger need to know, oh, we're looks like we're going to be out about 5 minutes late when we get there. So if you need to change your plans, there you go. Oh, I've got secure airspace coming up. So in about 5 minutes, I'm going to want to radio this person and say, hey, I'd like to transition your airspace. Can I get that approved? Now I'm ahead. Now I'm focusing on the tasks that I think I'll need to do in the future. And what's great about that is I'm in control. I am intentional. I've determined where I'm going and why. And if there's a curveball, if something unexpected happens, I'm so much more equipped to take that on because I've got this mind space I can allocate to wherever I need to continue flying the plane safely. And that's just such important processing for pilots. But again, that's just how I operate sitting here at my desk or in a team meeting. I'm like, what needs to happen in what order? We're not just going to be buried by random information without understanding what needs our attention first.
Yeah, really understanding what needs your attention first and having your priorities straight. And I love that framework you have: aviate, navigate, communicate. First of all, it rhymes, which is
I know,
great.
right?
It's great for remembering it. So kudos to that. But then it's simple, but I would say it's not necessarily easy either. Because I think a lot of times when we have a lot of different activities going on, it can be hard because we're inundated with stuff that are urgent, maybe not necessarily important, and there's important stuff that are not urgent. Figuring out how to prioritize that stuff. But just the fact that you just said, just fly the plane, figure out what you need to do first, and then from there, you're able to navigate. So I love how you set the stage for that.
Thank you. And it's also comforting to look back and say, you know what, on Monday, I had an overwhelming pile of tasks, but I did it. It's fine. Now I'm partway through the week and I'm caught up and I'm ahead of the airplane again. So because of that intentionality and that, proactive planning, I'll feel a little bit better next time I feel overwhelmed. And better yet, I can anticipate that pattern and say, next Monday, if I can give myself an hour to organize my mind and just take a look at my inbox and figure out how to prioritize that stuff, I know I'll feel better after that. So it would be silly for me to expect, what do they say? Insanity is expecting different results for the same thing or something like that.
Yeah.
So if I just went into next Monday and was shocked again at feeling the exact same overwhelm from the exact same inbound email, that's on me. I'm an adult. I should have seen it coming. Yeah. Right. And so like calendaring is something I take very seriously, again, just to structure and control my own time. So yeah, a lot of what I do is high stakes and super important, whether it's business or answering clients or writing the paperwork that gets money in the bank so I could pay people. Like all these things are complex tasks in their own way, but I can decide when they get my mind and how long of my attention they deserve.
Yeah, that's really key that you're in control of it, and that is a key thing that when people expect to be paid, when they don't get paid, they get really upset, understandably.
Yeah. I've noticed when you ask people how they are at any networking event, or you haven't seen your friend in a while, hey man, like, how are you? A lot of times what they say is, oh, just super busy, crazy. And it's interesting that's like 90% of the people I talk to, that's what they say. And I think in their mind, they're telling me how successful they are. Because if they said, nothing really is going on, that would make them sound like a loser in their mind. So they're making sure they don't sound like that by telling me how busy they are. When in my experience, feeling busy is bad, right? You're telling me you're stressed. What you're actually telling me, you think you're telling me you're successful and you're crushing it. I'm hearing that you're not great at prioritizing and maybe you need some help. So if I was going to come to talk to you about some project, hey, Paul, I want to do this super cool thing. oh, but Paul's super busy, so maybe he's not ready to take this on, Whereas if someone asks me how I am, I feel that urge to tell them how busy I am to impress them because we've normalized that as a society. But instead, I really take a pause and I say, I'm doing really good. Like a lot of good things are going on. I got married last week. I'm thrilled about that. I've got 15 shows that little Bobby at 18 years old would have dreamed of. Now we have the opportunity to build these things for people and call that our job. It's amazing. I'm grateful. I'm organized. I'm ready to crush all of the complicated tasks that it's going to take to get us across those finish lines. Yeah, I could tell you I'm busy, but that's not the point. That's not the one word I want you to take away from how I'm doing. And I think that's something we all need to work on, is just, if I'm asking you how you are and I'm only going to hear one or two words, make sure they're the words you want to tell me to make the impression that represents you and how you're actually doing.
Wow.
So Paul, how are you?
Yeah, I was waiting for
No
that.
pressure.
I'm doing really good. I was thinking about, because before we started recording, I think you asked me that, and I think I might have said I was busy, and I can explain why I was busy, but I ended up by saying that everything was good and all those stuff bring me joy, and I enjoy doing it.
Yes, I'll give you full credit.
Thank you. But no, I was positive, because that is so true, that we've really normalized just saying that we're busy and that being kind of a sense of accomplishment. But there's a quote I like by I think it's John Maxwell, I don't remember, but it's saying that activity does not mean productivity.
Oof.
Like, yeah, like
Yes.
just because you're doing a lot of things doesn't mean it's actually the things you're supposed to be doing, or it's making you more successful. So
I was asked on a different podcast recently to articulate what success is to me. And of course it varies for people, but I think a lot of young entrepreneurs who are trying to get into this be my own boss world, they picture themselves on yachts and all that, which is great, but they adopt this hustle lifestyle, and they put a neon sign on the wall that says hustle. And it's like, all right, like, you're going to have to do lots of work, outside of the 9 to 5 window. And that's part of the journey. We talked about that roller coaster, but I feel like they're seeing that maybe they've heard all of these successful people talk about how busy they are. And they're like, oh, I need to embrace this busyness because that's the success I've been told to want. And it's fascinating because I don't think that's true. I never wanted to be super busy. That doesn't sound like the right thing, I want my own dream day to look like my real day, and it's interesting to think about if you had a day off or your whole day got canceled for whatever reason, and you woke up tomorrow and you're like, I could do whatever I want. I got a weekend off. I didn't even see that coming. Maybe I've been so buried in other tasks, I didn't even see that I had some free time coming up. And here I am. What do you do? What time do you wake up? What do you eat first? Where do you go? Who do you talk to? Like, do you need to work? Do you need a project? Do you need to move? It's interesting to just visualize that dream day. And obviously you can't just wake up and sit on the beach all day every day. That's not going to feel compelling and engaging after maybe a couple of weeks of that. But you can put little pieces together. And I think back to even in the Cube days, the one thing I remember the most is I didn't like waking up at the time I had to wake up. And I didn't like the clothes I had to put on. And I can remember those moments, the alarm's going off. It's like, oh, like I'm really not done sleeping. Like, yeah, I could go to bed earlier, but that doesn't help. I just don't like being awake at this time. And the dress code and, I have to put on the clothes that make sense for the company and all that. Like, I respect that and I will. Yeah. But I was aware of that disconnect. I knew this wasn't my ideal day starting. And fast forward to today when I've got a little more control over my time, and I can decide team meetings start at 10 o'clock. And if you need me before 10, it better be an emergency because I'm not trying to do any work before that if I can help it. And I realize that's like super lucky And it's been 20 plus years in the making. But now when I wake up, it's not my alarm saying, stop sleeping, beep, beep, beep. You can't be in bed right now. Instead, I have coffee shop music playing in the bathroom and downstairs. And so if I'm asleep, that's fine. And don't get me wrong, if I've got a podcast to jump on at 9, I'll set an alarm and get there. But if I can wake up naturally because coffee music sounds like where I do want to go, doing that most days has absolutely changed my life. And to be clear, I still get more done in a day than I used to in a week when I was working 40, 60, 80 hours a week. But I can put my foot down in some areas and say, if I can wake up this way, it's going to make a difference. And that's what I choose. And that kind of intentional change to my routine has been so powerful. And that's what success is. It's what happens after the hustle. You've done the hustle. You've put in the work. You're starting to see the reward consistently flow. And now it's like, okay, like I can pay my mortgage. That's going to be okay. I don't lose sleep over that. That's very lucky. And it took a long time, but now what do I do if I'm not worried about that? If I don't have to be up at 9, what do I do? Do I sleep till 10? Do I go for a run? Do I scroll social media? All these are options, but I want to make an intentional choice about it and make that reality as close to my dream day as I can. And if I can, that's when I start to feel successful.
That's really cool. How you even talked about the success happens after the hustle, because I think there's so much focus on the hustle piece and like no sleep, like trying to do all these different things to achieve a life that people don't even know if they want.
Yeah.
It's just because people have told them this is what success looks like.
Yeah.
But the fact that you are able to define what success looks like for yourself, because I think that's the key thing is until you take a step back, do some self-reflection, think about, okay, what is it that I actually want? What are the intrinsic motivators for myself? Because I think a lot of times we have all these external factors and social media. I mean, I love it. I have a love-hate relationship with social media, because it just paints a picture of a reality that doesn't exist all the time. It's just snapshots of different things. And yes, you can learn a lot from social media. I mean, I'm putting stuff out there all the time, but a lot of time we can get caught up in what everyone is saying success looks like, or like you mentioned with the yachts or the cars, all these different things. But then you look at these ultra successful, ultra rich people that are depressed, even though they have those things. And then you realize that that's not actually a goal, because those things don't sustain your happiness.
Yeah. And circling back to the role of money in happiness and the role of social media in life, I think those are two important topics. And for the social media scrolling, listen, I'm just as guilty as everybody else. I'll go into that black hole, and it's amazing. I can open Instagram and it'll show me cool fighter jets, soccer highlights, and great music, like the things that the algorithm has learned is what I want. But my brother just deleted all the social media apps from his phone, and he said it was because there are huge companies with tons of experts, and their full-time job is to keep you there, and they're good at it because that's their whole life. So he didn't like that. He wanted that control, and he was noticing the diminishing returns. If I open Instagram while I'm having coffee, I like the first couple things I see. I feel like I've got a pulse on my friend group, whatever. But fast forward, all of a sudden I've been doing it for 45 minutes and I'm not gaining any value at all. You know, from minute 45 to minute 46 to an hour, it's not getting better. My life is just withering away. And so they do make it hard to get out of it because that's what it's for. But, you know, just to be intentional about that too is important. And there's nothing wrong with it, but just know that you've chosen to give that your time. And then the other piece with success and money, like I said before, a shortage of money certainly impacts your feeling of unsuccess, right? It makes it hard to do what you want and be your own person and be in control. So there is a role that money plays. That being said, once you've gotten above the threshold of stressing about money being no more, that's wonderful. Like you've achieved financial success in a way already. But then, so say for an events company, we work so closely with colleges. Colleges aren't really having any concerts in July or November. And so we're pretty quiet. We have enough work to do because we've got lots of other stuff to get ready for, but our whole team slows down. And if our goal of success, if our why as a company was pure profit, I should be out hustling for more shows because, of course, there's demand for concerts in the summer. We could go sell our team to support some festival and run their side stage and sell tickets. And there's a direction there that we could explore. And if that's something we chose to do, I'm not opposed to it. But our goal is not profit. It's happiness. It's happiness that we give to the people that we serve. And it's happiness internally for our team. And if we were always up till 4 a.m. every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday all year round, we would not be happy. We would be the classic roadie that we've all seen, who's a overworked, underpaid grouch wearing black denim and greasy gray hair, and they haven't had a full night's sleep on a bed for 3 weeks. Those are the people that they tell you, yeah, like it's just the grind, man. Like it's rock and roll, and it's magical in a way, but it's not sustainable happiness. And so, even circling all the way back to data and engineering, the information we use to track happiness is important. Every week, everybody on our team has to submit a report numerically. And it says, how happy are you from 1 to 5? And how stressed are you from 1 to 5? And how full is your plate? I call that utilization. And so I get 3 numbers from everybody every week. And I have a whole dashboard and I can see it. And I equate this to an airplane engine because the team's the engine. And if I look at the data sheet on an airplane engine, I can see oil pressure, cylinder temperatures, fuel burn rate, temperature issues. And if everything's in that little magical green range, at a glance, the engine's healthy. The engine's going to keep generating power sustainably. Just like the same thing on a team. If somebody reports a 1 for a happiness, that's going to light up red. I'm going to literally get alerted to that as a problem. And I'm going to look at it. And if stress is higher than happiness for a long period of time, this engine is failing. And so I'll be able to see that problematic behavior early, and I'll do something about it because I need the engine to work. And so happiness being the goal over profit is a huge part of our company culture. And when we have any sort of issues, we pause and we talk about it because flying the airplane requires the engine to work. And we know first thing you got to do is keep flying the airplane before you worry about anything else. And we have emergency meetings, and sometimes I'll say, hey, I saw your happiness dipped to a 2 and you're usually a 4. Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do? Is there anything you want to talk about? Sometimes it's just like, oh, like something going on with the family. Things are a little hard right now because you can't all be roses and gumdrops 24/7 every day.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. If you need some time or if there's anything I can do, like, let me know. But I'm not the problem. Work isn't the problem, but there's a happiness dip and we need to address that. Sometimes it's, I'm buried in work and I need some help. It's like, okay, let's reallocate some resources. Let's get you some support. I'm glad I asked. And that's interesting. And I loved that so much as a management tool. I started doing it for myself each week for personal metrics that only I submit and only I see. And those are, how am I feeling professionally, personally, and physically? And usually I'm either feeling pretty good overall, and if I'm not, that helps me figure out why. And if it's to dip in how I'm feeling physically, it's like, oh, I'm going to take the dog for a long walk today because I just need to go outside. I haven't been outside in 3 days, it turns out. I didn't even notice that. Okay, we can fix this. We now have a target to address the situation. And if it's I'm doing great professionally, but personally I'm feeling like I'm lacking, all right, I need to set up some time to spend time with my nieces and nephews or something, and that'll help boost that. So I like this idea of breaking down things that are subjective and hard to measure into things that are a little bit more specific so that I can identify issues and decide where to focus to improve the whole situation.
Yeah. is when you are able to have that data and you identify the issues, then you actually can do something with it. I think a lot of times we know something's wrong, we don't know what is wrong, so we don't know how to fix it.
And we just wallow and circle, and we don't know how to get out. And time helps with most of that, but imagine if you had data to act on. Like, we're engineers. We need a problem that we can solve.
I was gonna say it's very engineer of you to break it down, even for your team in your personal life. But I think it's something that's applicable. It's something very intentional. Even the fact that profit is not your goal. Obviously, you need to make a profit to continue to proceed as a company. But having happiness as a metric is not something I hear very often. So that's amazing.
And you know what's crazy about that? As soon as we scaled the happiness intentionally with data and follow through and a lot of work, that's when the money started flowing. Which obviously in hindsight it makes sense, but we differentiated as a team that was passionate and focused about engineering this happiness in a way that hadn't been done before, as opposed to companies that were trying to generate dollars. And that absolutely has been done before many, many times. And so by being true to our own unique mission, that got people's attention. And so now we're doing more shows and people have cool ideas and we're excited to pursue them. And just by scaling, that's what makes it work as a business. And so when an accountant looks at the balance sheet, we're successful now in their language too, because we didn't make that the top line goal. Crazy.
Yeah, so the profit being the output instead of what you're actually working towards.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool. But we've been going for a little while, but I want to make sure, is there anything about, because I know you talked a little bit about leadership, about what you're doing with GBM6, as well as being a pilot. I definitely want to talk more about that, like how you got into being a pilot, emphasis on for fun, because I feel like that's not something a lot of people do. So if you wanted to go into that, or if there's something else you're more passionate about that you want to talk about too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Airplanes have been something I've been obsessed with since I was wearing fighter jet pajamas as a toddler. I grew up near an airport. I could see airplanes flying around all the time. And I'd remember even playing outside. Anytime I would hear that sound of an airplane engine, I would want to know which airplane it was, if it was one that I recognized, if it was a fighter jet, that was a special thing. I've just always been really impressed and excited about just like this idea of building something that can fly. Like that's literally something I would dream about. And just, I wanted to understand, what is it that makes that happen? How can I learn about this? How can I understand this? Because that threshold of creating flight from lots of little parts that each make sense is just so magical and inspiring. And so I wanted to learn everything I could. So my first adult decision after I graduated undergrad was to get a credit card, to max it out on flight training and start. And I got about halfway to my pilot's license over the first year or two. And then I ran out of money. I needed to get a new car so I could carry my DJ stuff to these frat basements. And I had to stop. So I had to, reorganize and earn some more capital to keep it going. But eventually I did get my private pilot's license way back in like 2006 or something like that. And it was just the coolest thing to be able to take your friend up or go by myself. It's one of the few things I can do by myself and feel totally happy. Whereas a lot of things I'd prefer to share. And, I like to share it too. If someone wants to go to lunch or just zoom around in circles or watch the foliage or take pictures, it's such a special thing. And fast forward to 2020, when the world was in a kind of a weird spot.
Oh, man.
As a person who owned a business in special events, this was a bad place to be. And the timing couldn't have been worse. We were getting ready for April. April's when 77% of college events happen. And we were about to do all of them and get paid after a long off season. And then the world stopped and said, you can't do any of these things. And that was tough. So obviously surviving as a business was a huge challenge. Everybody struggled with that. But I think the events industry was hit pretty hard. And so first I had to figure out, okay, fly the airplane, right? Aviate first, even though I'm freaking out. So how do I pay the mortgage? How do I meet payroll? Can I get unemployment help? Are there federal grants that can help bridge this gap? We had to do all that to exist as a business through this time. But once that was taken care of, all right, now I'm sitting in my house. I can't work. There's nothing to do. What do? I don't want to just watch TV. We all watched a lot of TV in 2020, but
Yes.
I needed something else. I was hungry. I said, I could keep leveling up this airplane thing. I could keep learning. There's more to understand. And that's when I got my I studied for my commercial license. So just self-guided study sessions online. And I did my flight instructor prep. I did my advanced ground instructor prep, and I just learned. And to learn about something I wanted to understand more was what gave me that purpose when I really needed one that wasn't coming from events at the time. And so the moment it was safe to be in a plane with an instructor with masks on, I was there that day furthering that training and getting those certifications. And I just love the idea of, not only do I now know how to fly an airplane, which I'm so proud of and so fascinated by, but I know how to teach you how to fly an airplane. I know if I told you how to take off, I know what you would do wrong and why. And I know how to explain to you why that happened in a way that was not what you expected. And just that level of thinking and teaching and communicating and deep understanding is fascinating to me. Do you want to know some interesting things that happen on a takeoff that you wouldn't expect?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we have time for this?
Yeah.
Okay. I happen to have my little airplane model here because I've got three of them here.
Yeah, so definitely, I would say for those of you listening, you definitely want to go on YouTube to watch this.
Okay, I'll try to use lots of words too for the audio folks.
Yeah.
But what we're looking at is a small model airplane with one engine. So if you're staring out the windshield, you see a propeller. And from where I'm sitting as the pilot, the propeller is always turning clockwise, right in front of me. So taking off, I'm going to apply full power. So now this propeller is spinning really hard, and the airplane is starting to move forward, right? Makes sense so far. This is what a takeoff is. Believe it or not, it's not that complicated. All we need to do to make this plane fly is get enough air moving over these wings so that they become lighter than they weigh, because lift will eventually offset gravity. So when the plane's sitting still, the wings are full of fuel and they're holding you down to the earth. When they're moving a little bit faster, there's a little bit of lift offsetting some of that weight. And when you go fast enough, the lift exceeds the weight, and now the pressure you're getting from the wings is up and not down. Now you're flying. That's what it is. So when you're zipping along the runway really fast and the propeller's spinning, some interesting things start to happen. One, torque. Newton tells us that every reaction has an opposite reaction, right? So if this propeller is slamming clockwise, my plane is slamming the other way because it's attached to that propeller, especially when it's no longer on the ground. So if you just go straight and lift up, you're going left. And you won't know why. And there's lots of other reasons. They all make you turn left, which is wild. The plane is also a gyroscope. And there's this thing about when you put pressure on a toy gyroscope, if it's spinning this way and you push it up, it feeds back 90 degrees ahead of the gyroscopic spin, also turning you left.
Okay.
There's another thing, and tell me if we've gone too far, but there's like 4 of these.
Yeah.
So
keep going.
this propeller is churning through the air, and it's making like a tornado of wind disruption. That is your thrust, but you're also flying through it right after it disrupts the air. And if you think about the tornado that this clockwise propeller is generating, the air is going underneath the belly of the plane, and then it's slamming into the rudder back here, and it's turning you left.
Wow.
Right? Another one. And the final one, and then we'll be done, I promise, with airplane tech, is the way a propeller works is actually tiny wings. And when you're lifting up, if you see when you're looking at a propeller a certain way, one of them is very thin, which will go fast through the air. The other one is thick like a paddle, which is going to have a lot more resistance of the air. The way that works when you're climbing and you're up, you're going to end up chomping a much bigger bite of air on the right side of the propeller, which also gives you more forward thrust on the right side of the propeller than the left, which turns you left. All these things are summarized as left turning tendencies. And
Wow.
when you learn, the instructor just says, as you take off, you're going to need to put some pressure on the right rudder. And that's how you stay straight. I needed to understand all of those 4 or 5 things that were making this happen. Why do I need right rudder to take off in a straight line? I refuse to accept that without a much deeper understanding. So to spend 2020 going deep into these subjects and just really understanding it was awesome for me. It made me a better person, a sharper thinker, a much better pilot, a safer pilot, and a better leader and manager. And that's what's really made this all work. And now that we've kind of got our footing again post-pandemic, the company is absolutely thriving, and the team has risen to the challenge, to the point where I don't have a lot of responsibilities on site at a show anymore. I used to do it all. There was a time when I drove the truck, built the stage, DJ'd the show, took it all down, and returned all the gear afterwards. And now the team is so specifically organized and empowered and accountable. They know exactly what they need to do. And I've been able to build a structure where the right information flows efficiently, so that if we're all doing our job, these shows happen well and nobody feels stressed or overwhelmed. We do what we love to do. And that's such a gift to be in that space. And what I've started to do as my new venture is take this whole leadership pilot thinking thing and teach people how to think like a pilot, regardless of whether you're trying to fly airplanes or not. And doing some keynote speeches and training sessions and seminars has been a really cool way to fly forward and figure out how to empower people to live in this way that pursues your passion and isn't that too busy, so busy, stressed out, overwhelmed mentality that I think too many people are experiencing every day.
That's really good. So you help them aviate, navigate, and communicate.
That's it.
That's good. Wow. No, really good story. And yeah, I love the what you're able to have the model plane and describe the left turn tendency as well. So that was been good. Yeah, we're at over an hour, so we'll have to wrap things up. But
We'll
I
skip
really
the
enjoyed
fighter
the
jets then.
Yeah, the fighter jets.
Just
Yeah,
kidding.
I feel like we could easily go another hour, but I don't know if people would stay with us
That's
now.
fine. Well, listen, if you ever get a cancellation and want to go deep into something else, I'd be happy to. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, let's definitely stay connected for sure. Sure. I want to make sure people know how to stay connected with you, whether it's your socials, websites, all the stuff you're doing, especially what you're doing with keynote speaking as well.
Thank you. If you visit bobbydutton.com, that'll take you to a shortcut to all the different directions you could go after that. But thinklikeapilot.com is the keynote speaking stuff with a lot of creative thinking about applying aviation thinking to life on the ground. So definitely check that out. And if anybody needs keynote speakers or has an in, I would love some introductions to keep pushing that. If you just want to learn some tidbits about it, follow Pilot Thinking on Instagram. And that's where we'll put some content periodically as well.
Oh, that's really good. Just all the analogies. And I can see your passion for multiple things, because we spent a lot of time talking about the event space and you DJing. And then we talked about leadership, and then we wrapped this up with aviation and pilots stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff I had no idea about, especially with the aviation and like the propellers and one being thinner and thicker and all this stuff.
Yeah. You know how you can always tell there's a pilot in the room?
How?
They'll tell you.
Oh man. That is really funny. That's good.
Cool.
But no, I really appreciate you making the time, because I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing. Just being able to share your wisdom with the audience and really turning it to the audience. I hope you got something. Actually, I know you got something from Bobby's story of really just understanding something that you're passionate about. Like maybe, like I know you said you went into computer engineering, doing hardware and software, and maybe there's something you're passionate about, but there's something that you need to do to just sustain yourself, and it's okay to be there. I think what's not okay is to just ignore your passions and just not even go after it. Because if you do that, you could be robbing people from what you bring to the world. But I'm sure your team is grateful that you're able to create GBM6, and they all have jobs because of that. If you hadn't taken the chance to hire that first general manager instead of paying yourself first, who knows what it would have happened.
It's true. It's true. Steve Jobs says the story always makes sense when you connect the dots looking backwards, which is interesting. So, graduating, I would have never said, okay, I'm going to get this job writing code for 5 years. I'm going to hire a general manager. Then I'm going to push the event stuff. Then I'm going to take the DJ thing and challenge concerts. And then I'm going to do this speaking thing and get my pilot's license. None of that would have been this practical 10-year plan.
Yeah.
But looking back, like you said, it's an interesting journey, and it kind of makes sense. So it's interesting to have faith in the universe to keep you on your path and make intentional choices about how you stay on it.
Yeah, that was a key thing we talked about, was an intentional path, faith in the universe, faith in God, whatever your faith is. But it definitely takes faith to go forward into doing something that you're unsure of.
Yeah.
That's been good. But for everyone that's been listening, you got something from it, like whatever it is, definitely reach out to Bobby, stay connected with him, learn more about what he's doing. I'm sure you have a lot more pilot jokes that we could get out. But
You be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I was like, we'll leave it at that. But I would say for everyone, just keep pushing, keep learning, and keep being incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible.